AmandaLand. We up. Good morning, Marley.
Good morning. How are you?
I am well. How are you doing? Oh,
I'm
brilliant
good. I'm
one.
impressed by your singing and your energy. I have my coffee right here, so I needed that. Very energizing.
Yes, I am an early riser. And you are an early bloomer. That's what we're gonna say. Yes, Marley is an old soul who said, "Let me get out this womb and get busy." Okay, let me get out this womb and get busy. So let me properly introduce Marley Dias. I think it's really incredible that when I met you, you were a young person on your way and that you've managed to stay on your way, which also means that you did not get pregnant. And I want to commend the people around you for keeping you on track, So this is a quick, this is what the internet say. So you tell me if it's still accurate. Okay. Marley Dias is an American activist and writer. While Dias was in 6th grade in November 2015, she launched a campaign called 1,000 Black Girl Books to collect 1,000 books with Black female protagonists to donate for Black girls at other schools in the U.S. She also has a book called, let's bring it on the stage. Where is it? Wait, hold on. What's happening? Oh my God. I'm panicking. Okay. She also has a book right here called Marley Dias Gets It Done. And so can you. Look at these gold Adidas.
Thank
All
you.
Right. Her Substack Third Space is described as a weekly cultural critique by Marley Dias, author, activist, and Harvard sociology student. Is all of that accurate?
Yes, all that is accurate.
What year are you at school?
I'm going into my senior year. It's crazy.
Oh,
yeah. I'm really excited.
Seniors.
Exactly.
Yes. And how's it been so far?
It's been good. I mean, obviously, Harvard is always in the news, but my mom would always say, like, before I went, she would say, have fun at the Death Star. Like, she knew it was very clear.
I love it. Yes.
Like, I didn't know going in when I applied that it was going to be like the home of empire. But as soon as I got there, I was like, something is spooky about this place. And I think for me, like, seeing everything in the news is just it's just a reminder of my own like lived experience. And I'm excited post grad I want to collect all the stories of people that I've gone with and put something out into the world that can educate people on what going to an Ivy League is really like. Because I meet so many high schoolers that really want to go, and you went to Columbia, you know what the vibe is. It's not what it seems, but it is still like that paperwork is still powerful. So it's interesting to navigate the two, if that makes sense.
That is correct. I only went to get my master's at Columbia so that I could not have to, so I would have less arguments.
Exactly. Like, I don't necessarily know that I needed to go to Harvard, because when people ask me the top 5 things I'm proudest of, like, Harvard is not on the list, but it has brought me in it's given me the sense of connectivity to other young people, and how kind of also like the silence is violence part of it, where there's a lot of things that are happening at our school that people I would have thought would be standing up for more. So it'll be interesting to see when I graduate.
It's a microcosm.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, the world. You're like, so y'all are just going to be okay with this? Really?
Yeah, literally.
And they're like, I have to go to class, which is the same as, y'all are going to be okay with this? And people are like, I have to go to work.
Exactly.
It's the same. Now, Marley has been doing her thing on the writing tip, and I wanted to talk specifically about a piece that really, I felt, just covered a number of topics, but in the wake of this thing I did for Jubilee called Surrounded, where I was surrounded by 20 Black conservatives, there was a topic that came up in the conversation around redlining, where they literally just tried to say that redlining didn't exist. Now you have this dope piece that you guys, I want you to check it out after, called The Cost of Cool. And the subtext is on Do the Right Thing, Third Spaces, shade equity, and why Black communities are still fighting for air, literally and politically. So first, I would just love for you to tell me what inspired you to write this, because you say in the article, like, I had to do a lot of research to do this. And I'm like, she was in school and she found time.
Thank you.
Let me.
I appreciate it. That's
I
very
hope you
sweet.
got to double it up. I hope this got to be like an assignment that you turned in as well.
No, I wish, but I'm waiting for next semester. Next semester, trust. It's all getting reworked.
Okay.
But yeah, for me, the inspiration was I love Do the Right Thing. And I think, I have this kind of been working this idea over the summer with another creative that I met at Harvard about using Do the Right Thing as an example of like third spaces. So for those that don't know, third spaces are these kind of communal sites of survival, creativity, and confrontation. So this can be on the block, this can be a hair salon, this can be a bookstore, places that aren't your home or your work that kind of create like a social kind of incubator, whatnot. And I think Do the Right Thing is a really powerful example because I remember the first time I watched it was summer 2020 and feeling this sense of isolation.
Whoa. Let us sit with that for a second.
It wasn't great. My parents were like, you know what we should watch on June 1st, the day after George Floyd died? Let's watch Do the Right Thing, Marley.
Yeah, this beautiful baby just said, I watched Do the Right Thing for the first time in 2020. Okay, well, I love that. Your parents are on it, though. So I love that they were like, we're going to bring you into this. Okay, carry on.
Exactly. But I thought of it kind of as a metaphor for how heat both literally and politically shapes Black life. And I wanted to connect the way that Stoops and corners kind of act as third spaces in the survival of today's climate crisis, where, like you said, we see that redline neighborhoods are hotter and deadlier. So the piece is about, like you said, shade equity, environmental racism, and why public spaces is where Black freedom has always been rehearsed, practiced, and acted on, and why we have to fight for that as we see the development of all these, nice luxury apartments. We see people losing the stoop. We don't have rent parties or kickbacks. Like, we're losing these recipes. And I wanted to write something that connected a piece of art that we all know and love to our current relationship and try to use it as a backdrop or like the blueprint of survival for Black communities.
So tell me more about the stoop. Like, did you grow up with a stoop to sit on?
No, I did not. Like, I grew up, I'm from West Orange, New Jersey. Like, I'm from the
burbs.
Exactly. The burbs. And I didn't grow up having, like, as you know, Jersey is a driving only place where we don't even in my nice high tax community, our sidewalks, like on my block, the sidewalk ends like halfway down the street. And it's a reminder to me as a kid that I was like, I couldn't go walk to my friends, even in a nice, safe community.
Wow.
It's like there was no way to safely
traverse. Yeah,
exactly. And without that, I think when I watched the film, it was like I was jealous in a way to have the sense that you could go outside and see a Ruby D or see an Unk, like an Unk.
It's a New York vibe.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. Like I was jealous.
Like New York, and I got to sit on the stoop. I was like, oh, this is a thing. I get it.
And it's really like everyone says they love, people watching. And there's this beautiful James Baldwin quote that I know you probably know, which is that when you look out into the world, everyone around you is a reflection of you. So the angry bus driver, the Karen, the little kid crying, like all the good and bad is a reflection of us. And when I watched Do the Right Thing, I was like, I see this, I see myself in this, but I don't have place. And I recognized how much place creates space for expression, creates space for discourse, and also creates space for healing. Because we see the film shows how fragile, these third spaces are once state violence intrudes. And we can also think of state violence as a creating homes and communities that don't have access to third spaces. So it goes both ways, where when we're connected, we have the threat of physical state violence. And when we're disconnected, that's kind of designed and architectural state violence. And the piece just took me through so much. So I'm really glad you like it, because it took when you have word salad and all the ideas, it takes a lot to make a case that people can kind of understand.
Well, it's so also imperative that we really do better at connecting the climate crisis to racism and capitalism and imperialism in like basic ways, right? Exactly. Because I think that there's this like, oh, it's overcomplicated, and like, it's not that deep. It's not that complicated, I should say. It's deep, but it's not that complicated. And I would love for you to just expound upon what you were talking about in terms of racial, why am I losing my thoughts right now? What you were talking about in regards to climate racism.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's one part that I want to work people through before I get into the climate, which is that loitering is freedom. And I think that's a really important thing for people to understand. And I drew on the work of an amazing researcher named Sadia Hartman, who can talk about how you trace Black loitering on stoops, corners, and sidewalks as a form of rebellion against confinement. So we see this from Jim Crow laws and today's no loitering signs and hostile architecture, where Black presence in public has been policed and criminalized. Now, once you have that, once you go outside and we see that the climate is literally making it hotter and suffocating us to not be able to go outside, it's combined with policy and climate. So like you said, we have to view climate crisis as racial climate, as racial crisis. So when we look at formerly redlined neighborhoods, they are now 5 to 20 degrees Fahrenheit hotter than wealthier ones. So it's proof that racism is mapped onto our climate. And you can call this kind of the new Jim Crow thermometer, which is what I've been calling it, where we see that Black and brown communities suffer disproportionately from urban heat, poor air quality, and lack of shade. And this also applies to homeless folks, where if we have architecture on a bench that cuts off the bench at every, at the waist.
I hate it so much.
It's horrible. There's no, you can't even cuddle up with your friends when you're like, you can't do anything. So hostile our architecture is an important example of that. And that when we have protection like trees, pools, bus shelters, AC, these things are distributed by race and by class. So shade itself becomes a matter of equity in these kind of instances. And then I go into policy as arson in this way, where you can connect the present day legislation of the Big Beautiful Bill to this crisis, where it is cutting climate programs, healthcare, food assistance, literal life and death decisions for vulnerable communities. So it's a part of the same logic that builds walls, prison, and hostile architecture. And they all really are connected. And I think it's so important for people to see climate as a racial crisis, especially with, as you know, all the things happening with XAI and the community in Memphis, Tennessee, that is literally they use diesel. Also, if people don't know that, because they built the factory so quickly, they use diesel. So imagine having 100 diesel trucks running at all times right next to your neighborhood with this terrible exhaust and terrible gas. So we see that Memphis has redline, Memphis has, a climate crisis and extreme pollution, and then politically is not being protected by its legislators or by the people in the community at all.
And its legislators are Black.
Yeah.
And they're Democrats.
Yes. And they speak on it, but it's because we have I think we have an issue where people don't recognize the importance of local politics. And we know this, we've gone over this a million times over and over, where we tell people to focus on local politics, but we need people, Democrats that are killers, that are going at it, that are fighting for these issues and are connecting them. Because I think that oftentimes we are trying to put Black issues versus climate issues versus space issues in separate boxes. But the point of this article is to show us the ways that they're all connected. And that when we as people on the left make arguments about changing things, it is not just for moral reasons. There is actually a science to inequality. And what I use Third Space for is to teach people the science of inequality. How do we get from loitering to climate crisis? And teaching people how to walk through those steps, because we don't have effective enough communicators that are drafting legislation that can sneak in the same loopholes that we see people doing with the Big Beautiful Bill. So we need stronger policy writers and better communicators.
Do you know why that is?
I don't think I know why it is. Tell me. You know more. You've seen it. You've seen cycles of Democrats. So this is where you come in.
Well, this is because it doesn't serve them to solve the problem. As long as there is a problem, they get to be the good guys that are fighting the problem, right? Mm-hmm. And so they get to play the role of the other without actually having to be the opposition. And the opposition is not to the problem. The opposition is to the other party. Mm-hmm. So it's like the whole idea of we got to keep people sick or else we don't have anything to sell. We don't have any reason to sell the medication. So Democrats are not an opposing party. They're I would say they're an obstacle party. And the obstacle that they serve is to not let the Republicans get too crazy, which obviously they haven't been effective at that. But they also serve at not letting the left get too strong. And not so when you say we need Democrats that are killers, that's an oxymoron. They're not, that party is not even designed for that purpose. And I think what a lot of people fail to acknowledge is that Democrats were originally the party for slavery. They were originally the party for slavery. I know we often talk about how the Republicans flipped, but we don't talk about how the Democrats were
also
literally
had to flip with them. Like,
they were the party for slavery. And then when it got to the civil rights movement, they were just kind of like more willing to go along with the laws that were put in place that Ford and the programs that Ford put in place. But for what it's worth, it wasn't like they were willing to do so to expand the moral and principled efforts to give Black people equality. It was because it made sense in the same way that, like, Lincoln did not go into slavery for Black people because he was like, they deserve to be free.
Yeah.
He was like, we need to win this war, so we need these Blacks.
Exactly. And he was also, his compromise originally was to send all of us back to Africa. He did not
He was like, I don't want y'all like here.
It was like, exactly. Like you said, it was an obstacle. We were the obstacle. And he was like, so y'all just gonna fight over all y'all workers. And I'm like, y'all should just leave. And they should just leave.
Yeah, like how about we just remove the issue?
Yeah, exactly.
Remove the issue. So it's the same with the 60s. They're like, oh, like y'all are like gonna fight over this. How about we just like use Black people to improve the economy? Like we were using them before to create the economy. Let's just like give them access to it. And so now we see here, fast forward, where so many Black people have actually allowed their bodies to be colonized. And so then we have someone like you who comes out of the empire, who comes out of the Death Star and is like, dun, 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 gotcha, literally. And you put together a piece like this that has all of this incredible information and this beautiful tapestry of seeing things through multiple lenses, right? It's not just like, this is science. I need y'all to see this through science. This is not just sociology. You know, there's an artistry in how you're writing this. This is the type of work that I want to just see more of, because we are seeing people through this internet become so much more cross, like their intersectionalities exist in a much more real way. Like people are not just looking at science or just looking at art or just looking at music. All of these things are intersecting, and you're doing a great job of that with this work. I would love for you to tell people about what redlining is for the trolls in the chat, as well as for everybody here who has to deal with trolls in their lives who don't know what redlining is, so that they can explain it to them.
Yeah. So to put it simply, first of all, redlining exists. Highly recommend reading The Color of Law. I'll look up who it's by. But it's an incredible book it's by Richard Rothstein, and it's about the forgotten history of housing in America. It's the essential white liberal read, but we also need to make it the black leftist read. But redlining is a discriminatory practice in which we see financial services and housing services being withheld from neighborhoods that have racial and ethnic minorities. And that's the simplest way to put it. So it's been prominent in the US, and we used it against African Americans, Mexican Americans in the Southwest, and Japanese Americans. So we can see this as a denial of credit and insurance, a denial of healthcare, and the development of food deserts in minority neighborhoods. But when you look in the hood and you only see 7-Elevens, Checkers, White Castle, and places that are open 24 hours, we can see this as another form of, versus like my neighborhood where you have Whole Foods, ShopRite, like in LA, you see Erewhon, whatever it might be. Having these services and having access to healthier foods.
What you know about Erewhon?
Like, if you can get a Hailey Bieber smoothie versus getting a quarter water, that tells a lot about the access that you have in your community. Fair. And that's a way we can put redlining is, why in your community do you have the Erewhon, the Cycle Bar, the Soul Cycle, all of those things? But in other communities, we only have 24
Kennedy
hours.
Fried Chicken, Kentucky Fried Chicken.
We have church chicken.
Your mama's fried chicken.
Literally. Everything's fried with a paper towel underneath it. Like, that's a whole different situation. So redlining is started, or the term was formed by a sociologist in the 1960s. And you can look at Chicago as one of the kind of prime examples of redlining, where the closer you get to the water in Chicago and the farther you go inland, you see more and more Black communities. We see higher crime. We see less shade. We see less public transportation. So you can look at this in Boston. Like, it goes pretty much everywhere in the US, where capitalism forces us to look at things by how people spend and what access people have. Black people are incredibly economically disadvantaged. We still have the same racial wealth gap that we've had since 1960. And now we have billionaires and literally about to move into trillionaires. So when we think about capital, we know that it is already and has historically been decentered from Black communities. And it also applies to the creation of sundown towns, where when there are places where Black community has capital, we also see whites taking over or attacking these communities to try to dismantle them. So Seneca Village, which used to be Central Park, there's Katrina, there's all these examples we can think of ways in which the climate has also been attached to the removal and the displacement of Black people.
You know, when we talk about the need for reparations, a lot of people really only think in the context of slavery, as if these active measures to harm Black people do not exist and that they aren't happening like by choice. And so as you were doing this research, did you draw any connections to what would be the reason why Black people would be sequestered into these spaces and not given the opportunity to have the same as the other groups?
I mean, for me, the simple answer is like white supremacy. And I hate that to me, it's that simple, but I think that people forget that like America was quite literally founded on the human trafficking of Black people. And then as soon as that human trafficking ended, we developed an apartheid system to segregate and kind of denounce the humanity of Black people once again. So there was this physical humiliation, this physical kind of violence of our communities, a separation of families. And then we move into a system where we have to, it is no different than South Africa. It is no different than what we've seen in other places. And I think it's really strange to be learning that when you're older versus when you learn about the 60s when you're younger. You think that like people just protested for a couple months and then things just changed. But in reality, you have to remember that from 1865 to 1964, we were seeing that whole regime. It was 100 years of that. So for me, it's a constant reminder that the placement and location of Black bodies and what they create and what they do is the central driving force of American policy. That all of the addendums we see, the amendments we see, are focused on controlling, using, extracting resources and capital from Black people. And we also didn't have a federal prison system until slavery ended. So we can also look at the carceral state as another form of control, where we don't count people that are in prison in our census. We don't provide them with education. They don't have basic rights. And still in our Constitution, you can be enslaved if you have committed a crime. So remembering that all of these, like pretty much all of the things we see past the Bill of Rights have existed in relationship to Black folk. And it's like, you really keep us in your brains at all times.
All times.
Like at all, like we are like the front thought of white policymakers and of powerful white people, because our freedom is incredibly valuable. And when we are free, we also, I think, have a higher tolerance for, I mean, not naturally. I don't want to say this. I want to be very clear. We do not have a higher tolerance for pain naturally, but we are willing to sustain a lot more, and we are stronger in the face of violence than a lot of other groups. And it can be both entertaining. The media benefits on our pain. Politicians benefit from our pain, and we're the only people that don't benefit from our pain. So recognizing that people really do enjoy watching Black people suffer, and that when we think about lynching, the history of lynching, like kids used to go to lynchings all the time. That was also a thing from, 1865 to 1960, that white people got to exist in a lawless America, but we were the victims of all of that violence for entertainment. You see the ways that the NFL draft and all the things that are in pop culture right now are still connected to the destruction, the violence, and the pain of Black people. And as a former big like NFL fan and all the things, like I love watching Black people do cool stuff. I get more and more concerned about the ways in which that the extractive gaze of like on Black people is also propagated by ourselves, because we've been trained to see ourselves as something either subhuman or beyond human. And it's really important to remember that we are being told to not think of ourselves as human. So we're either superheroes and we're queens and we're excellent, or we're nothing. And those two things aren't the only options. So with Third Space, it's a reminder for me to show people that like your humanity is single-handedly, you recognizing your own humanity is one of the most powerful political acts. And you have to be committed to it at all times, because they're either going to be entertained by watching you die or by watching you do something superhuman. And you got to decide if that's how you want to go about the rest of your life. But I can't do that. Personally, I can't.
I just feel like a proud auntie.
Oh, I can tell. Thank you. They don't know. Like, we go back from, I think I first met you when I was like 6 or 5 years old at a grassroots Give Thanks event in Newark. Yeah, like,
yeah,
we go all the way back.
I was doing some appearance, you know, for the kids.
Yeah,
and
popping out.
coming to hang out with the kids. And you know, but you know, I don't know if you know this, but I believe the children are future. Teach them well and let them be the way.
Thank you.
And you know, I just want you to know that we like hearing your wisdom as a young person. I don't want to discount the fact that there is a difference in you being a junior in college and me being an old head. However, for all of the elders watching, I need us to understand the importance of these intergenerational conversations, right? And being able to see where each other is at, understanding that we're both in the same place. We're on the same planet. We're here. And you are hopefully going to be here much, much, much longer than me. And so my role at this point is to really just serve as a conduit and as a resource to folks like yourself who are actively working to expand and continue the expansion that I am working to do, that our ancestors have been working to do, that is needed in order for us to really shift the axis of evil, to shift culture, right? To get Black folks in America to be in a practice of preservation that is not rooted in colonial individualism, right?
Yes, absolutely. I want to interject here to just say, like, everything you said is so true. And I think another thing is, you know, Gen Z, we started with a global pandemic. And I think that people really forget that how could that make you think that you have any force for change in the world when you watch leaders create and essentially allow a deadly virus to spread